Hi, Raquel Lowe, solarologist. Your voice matters. How does it matter? I'm going to give you a little version of one part of how it matters. Okay, we're going to a little bit of neuroscience, straight up. A little bit about how the brain develops. Okay, so the brain takes approximately 25 years to be fully developed, the human brain. When we're born with a brain stem, or what's also known as the reptilian brain. And that brain is, or that area of the brain is responsible for our instinctive responses, things that we don't need to think about, like our breathing and our heart rate, that we don't need to consciously control. We then really start to develop our right hemisphere, our right brain. I'll just show you something for the moment. Okay, so the right brain, or the limbic system, is known also as the mammalian brain. And the mammalian brain is responsible for our non-verbal communication, our emotional and relational experience, so how we're relating. It's also where the feelings and our gut feelings or intuitions are held, and it's also where all our traumatic memory is held in the limbic area. We'll talk about that in another video. And then from around the age of 12, especially, the frontal lobes, or the left hemisphere, start to develop, which the frontal lobes are known as the thinking brain. That's our executive functions, where reasoning and problem solving and verbal expression and memory for events and facts, like your who, where, what, when, how. And that exponentially develops from around the age of 12. So what do I mean by voice? Today I'm going to really focus on the limbic part of our voice, or what we call the non-verbal and paraverbal parts of our voice. So when we're born, we need to get 100% of our needs met, and we don't have language. We don't have verbal expression yet. And as you can see from what I've just said, a 3-year-old doesn't have all the verbal expression. A 6-year-old, a 7-year-old doesn't. Even 12 and beyond, we're learning so much more about verbal expression, all the words, and how to communicate in a verbal way. So how do we get our needs met? How do we have a voice when we're a baby or a toddler? So this is where we use what I call, or what we call, right brain to right brain communication. So a baby has a need. It may be hungry, it may be bored, it may want to cuddle, it may want to go outside, it may want to sleep. Okay, and through its right brain, its limbic area, and specifically I'm talking today about the non-verbal and relational and emotional exchange that happens between a primary caregiver and a newborn, a baby, a toddler, and so forth. So the baby has a need, and I'll describe it like this. It starts doing this, and then the primary caregiver, using its right brain, starts to empathize and tune in emotionally, relationally, to these non-verbal cues and these paraverbal cues, and then there's what's called attunement, and the need is met. So, when we're newborns, it's recommended up till around the age of 8 to 12 weeks that we, as a primary caregiver, respond to every vocalization, every sign from the baby, to try to attune to meet those needs. And then we start to give slightly more space around that after around the age of 3 months. And not, still we're attuning to, say, this is not in the books, but say 95% of their needs, and so forth, as they get older and older and older. So how does a primary caregiver meet those needs or tune in with this right brain to right brain communication? There are 7 major aspects of this. So there is body language. Okay, so reading the body language of, and this is going both ways. So the 0 to 9-month-old baby is like a little machine. It is scanning its world and memorizing. So this is perhaps another video, the difference between what we call implicit memory, which is this right brain hemisphere from newborn, implicit memory. So what that means is it's not explicit. That's the left hemisphere brain. That's the who, where, what, when. That's explicit content memory. And that's often what a lot of us think is memory. We think that it's just what we remember happened explicitly. But babies, all of us humans, are memorizing from the minute we arrive. I'm sure before. But we're memorizing this world from the minute that we arrive. And actually it is stored in what we call the limbic area, or the right hemisphere. and it's deep. This is where, the subconscious, the unconscious is already starting to be stored from the second we arrive. So everyone, for example, knows. I'll say that in a moment. So I'll just say the 7 major ways that we are doing this communication, having a voice before verbal language, is we're tuning into body language. Okay, so this is a non-verbal. So we're tuning into the body language of both. We're tuning into the gestures of both. All the gestures. We're tuning into the eye contact. So we're recording this. What does that gesture feel like, look like? What does that eye contact mean? What does that lack of eye contact mean? We're recording. A baby is going to reproduce a certain sound if the outcome resulted well. It's going to reproduce a certain body language if the outcome, it's going to want to move towards eye contact or not on eye contact at certain emotional states. It's going to learn things about, from its primary caregiver, what eye contact or not on eye contact means. And for the first around 8 to 10 months, there's a primary caregiver. This is why it's really important. There's hopefully and sometimes a secondary caregiver, but the infant will be learning and memorizing the primary first, and then it's able to expand. It will know a little bit about secondaries and then about relatives and friends and all of that, but it has to learn from a primary caregiver first, because it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to learn. So we've got body language, we've got gestures, then we've got eye contact. We have facial expressions. So straight away you will know what sort of face does this mean? What sort of face does this mean? Right? And this is what we're memorizing. This is called implicit memory. It's in our bodies, in our brains from when we arrive. Then there is tone of voice, timing of voice, and intensity of voice. Right? So these are the 7 major things that we are communicating with and from. And what I was going to say before is everyone knows what their primary caregiver feels like, looks like, does when they're upset or cross or angry or disappointed. We all have a visual of that. And even sounds can be heard. I know I remembered the sound of my mum's high heels on the tiles entering our house, and the sound of her keys. I could tell by the sound of her keys how they landed on the thing what might be in store for me, right? That's non-verbal and paraverbal information. So you may have heard in other arenas of life that non-verbal communication remains the most important communication. It's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it, right? And this is because from when we were born, we were recording all of this information, and we were making sense of the world, and we were getting needs met. And then for survival and for attachment and for nurturing and for avoiding shame and for staying away from fearful situations, we recorded all of this nonverbal. And for a good, 15 to 18 months, it's all nonverbal and paraverbal. And then from then on, there's a few words to communicate and so on and so forth. So it remains the most important part of our communication. Again, to recap, body language, gestures, eye contact, facial expression, tone of voice, timing of voice, intensity of voice. Humans are designed with a loud, so a deep, rumbling, masculine sounding voice. Actually, we're designed to move away from that. And a high-pitched, really fast, shrill voice, we're designed to move away from that. They're recorded as threat. I was listening to something from Richard Rudd the other day from the Gene Keys, and he said that the voice doesn't lie. I'm just looking at what he said, that all frequencies come through it. He said you can feel in someone's voice their love, you can feel if they have an agenda, and you can feel what they are hiding. This is implicit body memory. some people will say it's intuition because, yeah, our intuition and our gut feelings are there, but this is a very also neuroscientific way of how we develop. It's you can walk into your home if you have a partner or a friend, any of the people, you can walk into your office and you can feel what might be occurring. And that's more than just intuition. It certainly is. It's intuition, it's source, it's spirit, and it's also right brain to right brain communication. I used to say that my husband had this particular way of not quite looking at me, and me too. Like sometimes if there was like tension or we were going through something, that's like all of a sudden we're very, very fascinated in our dinner, and we're like, we have to look right here. It's not quite not looking, but it is definitely not looking, and it's a thing. These are the things that we're picking up on. So I want to just leave you with this idea of if your voice matters, then other people's voice matter as well. So I encourage you to tune in. Always, my son just came to memory. He was approximately 4, this beautiful little blonde. He's 18 now. And I was at the dining room table, and Phil was down the other end, and I was here. And I was obviously toning at Phil. And the 4-year-old or 3-year-old doesn't know what we're talking about, but he's recorded all of these things since he was born, and he knows what feels good, and he knows what doesn't feel good. And I'm toning, obviously, at my husband, and Joss stands up and he goes, "Mummy, use your nice voice, like da da da." And in that moment, I'm like, this boy is a genius. And I'm not saying to use a nice voice that's not of a frequency of authenticity. Have a tune in to all of your non-verbal. Feel your own body language. Be curious about your eye contact. Be curious about your gestures. Be curious about your facial expressions, your tone, your timing, and your intensity. It's not what we say, it's how we say it. And then tune into those things in the people around you. And don't override those frequencies. It's not you being crazy or guessing at something. Of course, and I will come back to this maybe another video, the way we were raised and the amount of trauma can definitely, it definitely alters what we perceive as threat. So for example, if no eye contact was threatening in your family home, even if that hasn't been fully resolved, and that takes conscious attention to work through that sort of overwhelming trauma. If no eye contact meant something punishing or shaming or scary at home, then when someone loses eye contact with you, that can set up a trigger, right? So this is where sometimes we're in safety in the moment, but our history will be triggered into the present by a nonverbal cue. And this is where relationships really matter, so that we can work out, what does eye contact mean for the other person? So we've learnt from our primary, then we learn from our secondary, we learn from our family of origin, and by about the time we're 7, it's all locked in, we're done. And this is what we want to work through and look at and change, because some of our family of origin homes have been overwhelming in terms of these signs. So this gives you a little bit of an understanding of everything that's going on when you're relating to another person. So much love. Bye.